Hey, good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. Today is the coldest morning yet on site. I think it's actually the warmest it's gonna be, right, Greg? And why doesn't my tool belt fit? Oh yeah, because I got a lot of layers on. We're gonna seal up this building. We're gonna get it closed up so that we can run temporary heat. We're gonna frame fake garage doors here using some really thick plastic, 6 mil. And we're gonna double that up inside outside to hopefully give us a little bit of air barrier and a little bit of insulation, even though we're not insulating it, obviously. But we want the light to be able to still come in here so it's not too dark since we don't have any windows and doors. So there you go, guys. This is just a temporary fix since we don't have garage doors. We wanna start heating this space. And obviously we've got all of our spray foam done. These doors are not gonna be efficient, clearly, but by doing the double plastic, this space will actually, the sun will warm it up, it will not have the air transfer through, and it will create somewhat of an insulation effect. It's like double pane glass is better than single pane glass. It'd be better than nothing. Okay, as we move into the interior and we're starting to do some work here, one of the first things we have to do is go around, and wherever the foam maybe expanded into our way, we've got to do a little bit of work. If I were to take this board, set it here, you know, this one's not too bad, but what I'm gonna do is just take the multi-tool and I'm just gonna run it right along the concrete edge. Give myself a score line. Yeah, I'm gonna destroy my blade, but that's okay, it's replaceable. And then I can take my little pry bar, and it comes up quite easily. You understand now the point. We want to get nice and tight down to the concrete. This was actually a poor example to show you guys because it was pretty good. Right here you can kind of see where this comes and sticks out a little bit. So we're just going around and doing that sort of detail where we're cleaning off the places that we have to make sure that we can frame properly, because that's what we're getting started on now, is this interior framing. We don't ever like to use treated wood on our frame, and honestly, because we're above grade, we don't really have to worry too much about that. However, this board that I'm working on is gonna be our bottom board that's gonna be down by the concrete. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take some WeatherLogic flashing tape, and we're gonna make sure that we tape around that bottom edge just to prevent contact to the concrete. And then our dimension stays the same. Treated boards typically can sometimes be thicker and just different dimension than a non-treated board. So that's why we don't like to use them. Take it for what it's worth. That's what we like to do. So here in a corner, because we've got boards coming in at an intersection, this post is turned this way to match all of our side posts, which means this dimension here is 5.5, but when you turn it and you measure this dimension, it's only 4.5. Actually 5 3/8, 4 3/8. What we have to do is line up this with the same plane that our end wall posts are, which are also 5 3/8. So we can't just line up with the post. We need to bring it in another inch, and then we're gonna go ahead and take the line laser here. So now what we can do, make a mark where that's perfectly plumb. These boards are gonna intersect right into our other wall. So the first thing we're gonna do is toenail these boards in. We're right on that line that we put on the sidewall board with our laser. That board's gonna eventually go back here, and we're gonna be able to use it to additionally strengthen this corner in the future. But we're gonna leave it out of the way so we can continue to put all of our connection points up this post. Now, one thing you guys might see in the video is we've got all of these marks already done. When we made up our posts, we put all the interior marks on them so that we didn't have to worry about it now. Okay, YouTube, another reason post frame I think is superior to stick frame, because we're able to do the spray foam insulation. And a lot of you on social media say, yeah, but dude, I feel sorry for the guy that has to remodel this or run electrical or plumbing, and guess what? You got all the room in the world. And R21 closed cell insulation, well, it's actually a lot thicker than that. Hell, in some spots we have to actually cut it back because it's the full cavity. Beautiful thing is this spray foam will really never have to be remodeled into. Like if you want to run wiring or plumbing down the future or change out your walls, that's all in the outside shell, not on any of the interior framing. So I know the question is probably going to come up about the 2x6 use instead of 2x4s like we typically do. And that's because we're on an 8-foot bay spacing, and this is going to be getting drywall. Now, a lot of times in the past, we don't end up doing a drywall interior. Obviously, a lot of shops get metal. This is going to be drywall. Now, the one thing that we do make sure is that we're going to want to use 5/8 drywall on all of these exterior walls. One thing I can say is the one other time we did a drywall interior was for my parents' house, and that was in 2017. And to this day, my dad said he has no drywall cracks on any of those walls. So, you know, I know this is unconventional. Usually you've got your 16-inch on center studs, but with 5/8 drywall on these 2-foot on center 2x6s, I've got no worries. It's gonna be a nice strong wall. Whenever I'm doing this, I don't even pull out my tape measure, because then I've got to look at the tape, get a measurement, transfer that measurement to this piece of wood, and that's when you sometimes make mistakes when you have, you know, multiple steps, versus if you just take your board. I've talked about this before, just set it where it's gonna go, make your mark, and this should be exactly the piece that I need. Whenever we like to frame things like doors and windows, I go ahead and use GRK screws, and that is because they are a structural screw, so I could feel good about that. But also they suck the material in nice and tight so that I don't have any gaps, which will cause irregular measurements. If and when we ever get these doors, we set them and then we go to trim the interior, I'm gonna have to build out some jamb extensions. And if these dimensions are not consistent throughout this door, it makes my job a lot harder. Whereas if I make sure that all of these dimensions are nice and tight and consistent, the same, I can cut my jamb extension exactly to the same dimension, install it, and it's easy. So a little bit of time now does make a difference later. If I went and used a gun nail, it might not suck and draw that material together as good. Now you can kind of see a little bit better on these corners. We run our sidewall into the post because that post is already on the same plane. But then on the end wall, we've got our post turned, 90 degrees from our side post so that they're all in the same plane. But what we have to do, and that's also for strength, we can't run them the other way to line up with these posts. So when we come into the corner, we figure out where that line is so that we're running in plane. We run that laser line up, fasten those by way of toenailing, and then we put this board in here for added bracing. All right, so we've got a lot of our wall framing done, and we're gonna go ahead and start laying out where our LVL headers go, and those headers are gonna be supporting the second story floor deck. And I always get questions about how you do a second story in a post frame. It's really not that hard. There's obviously things to consider. We'll talk about that as we progress, but we're gonna go ahead and fire up our rotary laser. We're gonna let that self-level, won't take very long. The lines that we've already put on these columns, we already know what those are. This is an 8-foot center line, and we wanna be at 9 foot, because this is going to be a 9-foot ceiling. We're just gonna use this 1 point. We set all of these columns off of the laser initially when we stood them. So we'll just use one of them to set the benchmark. I could go off of those marks and just not care, but if there was any issues throughout the build process, or if I made a mistake, which is very possible, now is the time to reset that. So I'm going to go off of a mark that I just checked and it was right where I thought it should be, and I will go ahead, set the laser, and then we'll make new marks for exactly where that floor deck is going to be on every post that we're going to be hanging one of these LVLs on. The way we're doing this is our I-joists are actually going to set on top of the LVL instead of sit into a hanger. I think it's a little bit easier to ensure quote unquote perfection, and it's a lot easier for Greg and I because we don't have to put hangers everywhere. We can just build to this benchmark of 9 foot for all of our walls and then set our I-joists right on top. Good? Okay. Okay, so what we decided to do was actually router out the LVL. And before I get a bunch of hate in the comments, listen, I understand that we're weakening this LVL by taking away some of the material. However, the purpose of this LVL and the way we're going to use it, it won't be detrimental to it. Just stick around and you'll see this is going to allow us to keep this LVL at the same plane as the rest of our framing. And what I mean by that is if you look at a standard 2x4, it's 1.5 inches, and if I were to put it next to our LVL, it's going to stick out. So when I frame it on the face of the column, we can't have that, otherwise our drywall won't be flush. So we're taking the router, this is the 1/2 inch, this thing is a beast, man. This is the 1/2 inch cordless Metabo, and we're just gonna router out where the post locations are, and then we're gonna be filling in and adding reinforcement. So in essence, all we're really doing is I'm using LVL material not necessarily for the strength, but because it is perfectly straight versus 2x, you know, you can get crowns and they twist and warp. And I want my floor system to be as straight and flat as possible. So this gives me that best, the best solution, I think. All right, so that's where my column is gonna sit, and we've still got 1.5 inches worth of material, way stronger still than just using a standard 2x12, which would probably suffice structurally, just not for the perfection side of what we're after. I'm ready, my guy. Set it up on that wall if you want. Want to set it up there for a second? I'm ready when you are.
Ready?
Yep, gotta go your way about 3 inches.
I see that. Oh, we gotta come out.
Okay, now you gotta go up, down, 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 stop. My way? Sounds like it's heavy, Greg.
What?
It sounds like it's heavy.
Yeah, it is pretty heavy.
Good thing you're such a beast. Now for the immediate future, all we're doing is tacking these up with just some regular 3 1/8 inch structural GRK screws. And then we're gonna come back through with some 1/4 by 4 3/8, 4 1/2?
I think 4 1/2.
Something like that. And we'll add those to this header as well. But the important thing for us right now is we just want to get it up and get it in position. Greg, wouldn't it make more sense for me to do the middle and you just flush up your end?
Well, then you gotta hold it and screw it.
Oh, good point, good point. I was just trying to take some of the load off you, man. But it sounds like that would just put all on me. Since we notched out the back side of these LVLs, we thought, and I think we should do this anyway, but we added this block, and Greg is working on it right now, from the bottom, which is tight with the foundation, up to the bottom of that header. So any weight that's bearing down on it is going to be transferred directly. So we're not just relying on the shear strength of our fasteners, even though I would probably say that it would have no issue. but I'm not an engineer, and this is a good way to just overkill it, make sure, so you've got a nice tight fit. Greg, make sure that those are all nice and tight as they go in so that there's no room other than just natural compression, but I think that's gonna happen no matter what, but this is probably as good as it's gonna get, and I feel really good about it. Oh, Greg, this is gonna fall down and hit me in the head. All right, we've got a big chunk of the wall framing done. We put in our headers where our I-joists are gonna set on for the second floor mezzanine. I'll take you through that as we do it, because I know a lot of people are always curious about how the floors are framed and how you do a second story in a post frame. It's really not that big of a deal. But the next thing that I need to do is determine where that angle is up there in the great room to define where the ceiling pitch is and get that framed in. But we're probably gonna wait on that because my scissor lift, which is battery powered, we don't have electricity here yet so that I can't plug it in every night. We've been plugging it into our power supplies and getting enough juice to kind of keep working. But probably tomorrow we're gonna lay out walls, start framing the walls, and kind of defining the actual living space inside of here. And then once we get our second story deck on, then we'll continue framing the rest of the walls up there. It'll be easier to work out of that mezzanine instead of on a scissor lift that barely fits one guy and tools and some materials. We'll start the next video with wall framing. We got to lay everything out, make sure we take into account exactly, hopefully all these pipes that are sticking out of the concrete are where they should be. And that'll take some time. It's going to take some time for sure to get all the walls laid out, marked where they go, make sure they're all square and accurate to the dimension on the plan. And then we'll start standing walls. But we're not going to do all the walls. Unlike a house where you just frame all your walls up, what I like to do is a little bit different, and we'll show you that. So make sure you stick around, hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed the content, hit the likes up. Huh? If you enjoyed the content, hit that thumbs up button, and I appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next video.